Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Brandis. I am with the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network's SBDC Tech Source Commercialization Program. I'd like to welcome you all today to Understanding New Cmnc 2.0 Requirements. To start, I'd like to introduce you to our state's Tech Source program. There are two components to this program, which include Cyber CYA, or Cover Your Assets, and Commercialization. Cybersecurity is an important consideration for all businesses, and we have some highly specialized consultants within our network to assist with this topic, including our presenter today, Dr. Sean Murray. He is a lead consultant for this program. The focus is on cybersecurity topics for all levels of business and their needs, from cloud computing, security measures, and using social media, to securing technology to meet compliance standards in government contracting. Support is provided to small businesses through free one-on-one consulting, training, and resources. If you're interested in receiving specialized consulting related to cybersecurity, please reach out to us and we will get you connected to this side of our statewide programming. On the other side, commercialization is the other part of it. It's designed to support science and technology ventures throughout Colorado. Businesses are pre-startup through advanced second stage. So if you have an innovative technology, you're likely a fit for the program regardless of your stage of business. Different from many accelerators and incubators that lead to equity funding, where you give away an ownership piece of your company, SBDC Tech Source Commercialization focuses especially on sources of non-dilutive capital, where there's no equity given, technology commercialization, and SBIR STTR grants. Assistance comes in the form of customized expert consulting at no cost to you, and through relevant workshops, events, and accelerator programs in person when possible and online throughout the year. Topics include SBIR, STTR, and advanced industry grant proposals, R&D tax credits, technology commercialization, government accounting, IP protection, market research, market sizing, strategic and tactical planning, access to capital, and much more. These resources are available thanks to support from SBA's FAST program, VISA, the Colorado Office of Economic Development and International Trade, the Minority Business Office, and the City of Boulder. If you're a business located in a rural part of Colorado or are minority or women-owned, we may have additional resources to help you, so please reach out. Just a few quick things. After this webinar, if you're interested in meeting one-on-one with one of our TechSource specialists or attending events, workshops, or webinars, please visit our website, which is sbdc-techsource.org, in order to get started. If you are located outside the state of Colorado, we encourage you to check out your local SBDC and resources specific to your individual state. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email following the presentation with a link to the recording. You'll also receive a copy of the presentation slides today. Just a few housekeeping things. Everyone is currently on mute. If you do have questions, please type them into the chat bar on the side, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end when we do an open Q&A. If you don't get your question answered today, we'll work on following up with you afterwards. All right, now I'm going to introduce today's webinar presenter, and we have Dr. Sean Murray with us today. Sean Murray is a principal scientist and the president CEO at Murray Security Services. He's assigned to the U.S. Missile Defense Agency as a senior cybersecurity professional, and he's an officer in the U.S. Civil Air Patrol. Dr. Murray has worked with the NSA, FBI, CIA, and the U.S. Defense and State Departments on various cyber initiatives and has over 20 years of IT, communications, and cybersecurity experience. His previous assignments include work with the U.S. Army Cyber Command in Europe, the U.S. Air Force, and with commercial industry in various roles of information assurance and cybersecurity. He's traveled the globe performing physical and cybersecurity assessments on critical national defense and coalition programs, and he's prepared reports for the House Armed Services Committee. Dr. Murray also serves on the International Board of Directors for the Information Systems Security Association. At this time, I will turn it over to you, Dr. Murray. Thanks for presenting today.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share out my screen. All right. Are you able to see?
Yes. Just get presentation.
Can you see a full screen?
Yep, you're good.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Jamie. Welcome everyone to another great presentation, facilitated by the Colorado Small Business Development Center Network, TechSource Commercialization, lots of partnerships here. It's a great conversation that we're having right now. It's a timely one because things are shifting, things are changing. It affects a lot of different stakeholders to include small businesses. So let's just jump in. I'm going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about Cmmc and where Cmmc is currently, where we came from, and then we're going to look at what enables most organizations to actually proceed and move ahead, and that is the what we refer to as CUI, controlled unclassified information. And this is what really will allow you to demonstrate your information security or your cyber hygiene in preparation for being compliant with Cmmc, the new Cmmc 2.0. All right, so overview of the new Cmmc program. So the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, Cmmc, which is based on the old Carnegie Mellon CMMI Capability Maturity Model Integration. Program enhances cyber protection standards for various companies. It doesn't matter if you're a large prime contractor such as Northrop or Lockheed or L3Harris, or if you're part of that supply chain. So you may be a sub to one of those larger primes. The idea is that you are part of the defense industrial base. So Cmmc program enhances cyber protection standards for companies that are somewhere contributing to the defense industrial base, either as a prime or as a sub, providing some type of service or capability or product, maybe a part or a component in a prime's prime contract. It's designed to protect sensitive, unclassified information, which is shared by the department with its contractors and their subcontractors. So the program incorporates a set of cybersecurity requirements into acquisition programs. So at the time of the solicitation, the government tells you what those requirements are, and then you describe how you're going to meet them, usually in your RFP, which provides the department increased assurance that contractors and subcontractors are meeting those requirements. The framework has 3 key features. So the tiered model, the assessment requirement, and then implementation through specific contract language when contracts are either awarded or for legacy contracts that are ongoing. All right, so the tiered model requires for Cmmc that companies entrusted with national security information implement cybersecurity standards that are progressively at advanced levels depending on the type of sensitivity of the information. So the information that we're going to look at and talk about, it refers to either basic or specific information. So the program also sets forth the process for information flow down to subcontractors. We refer to that as the supply chain. So how many different layers of the supply chain there are. So you may be a prime who hires a subcontractor, and maybe a subcontractor hires a third party for some of its capabilities as well. That's part of the supply chain. So there's responsibilities for the prime with its relationship with the subcontractors and any other vendors or subcontractors as well. The assessment requirement. So Cmmc does require, allow the department to verify the implementation of clear cybersecurity standards, or what I refer to as cyber hygiene. What is it we're doing? Do you have firewalls? Do you have antivirus? Are you protecting sensitive information or data using encryption? We'll talk about some of those types of things as we progress here. Implementation through contracts. So this is the legal piece. This is the glue that holds everything together. Once Cmmc is fully implemented, and we're not implemented yet, there are certain DoD contracts that will handle sensitive unclassified information, which will be required to achieve a particular, what I call cyber hygiene or a Cmmc level as a condition of your contract award. In other words, you're going to be required to demonstrate a specific amount of rigor that you have invested in protecting not just your network, but the sensitive information that is processed, transmitted, or stored. And there's various strategies. Do you want to create a specific network or a segment of your network that is going to be protected, or are you going to secure your entire organization's network? Depending on the contract award, you may come up with one of those two strategies for securing the information. All right, evolution to CMMC 2.0. In September 2020, the DoD published an interim rule to the DFARS in the Federal Register. So DFARS case 2019 D041, which implemented the DoD's initial vision of the CMMC program, referred to as Cmnc 1.0, where they outlined the basic features of the framework. A tiered model, which required various types of assessments and implementation through contracts. The interim rule became effective on November 30th, 2020, establishing a 5-year phase-in period for a 5-tiered cyber hygiene system. So you had 5 different tiers under the Cmnc 1.0. So last year, about a year ago in March, the department initiated an internal review of CMMC's implementation, informed by more than 850 public comments in response to the interim DFARS rule. This comprehensive programmatic assessment engaged cybersecurity and acquisition leaders within the Department of Defense to refine policy and program implementation. This includes legislation passed under the last 2 administrations. I actually participated with legislative leaders in the Senate and within Congress within our own state to address some of the concerns that small businesses had, myself included, which required under the Defense Reauthorization Act to actually provide Congress and legislators with a review and an explanation from SecDef, Secretary of Defense, back to Congress on how they plan to implement the program and protect small businesses in order for them to be able to comply without having to break the bank. All right, there's other issues that were addressed as well, but this is why we have the evolution to CMMC 2.0. So back in November, the department announced CMMC 2.0, an updated program structure, requirements designed to achieve the primary goals of the initial review. Again, the initial strategy is to demonstrate a specific cyber hygiene to protect sensitive, unclassified information. Classified information is covered completely different process and programs that are been in place for decades. So again, we're looking at controlled unclassified information, sensitive technical information that is, pertinent to the security of the United States and may be handled by a prime or a subcontractor as part of the supply chain. So safeguard sensitive information to enable and protect the warfighter, dynamically enhance defense industrial-based cybersecurity to meet evolving threats, ensure accountability while minimizing barriers to compliance with DoD requirements. They're always evolving. Contribute towards instilling a collaborative culture of cybersecurity and cyber resilience. That's through reporting. So if there's something wrong in your organization, they don't want you to hide it. They want you to collaborate, make things stronger, get resources to fix those areas where you may not be as strong as you wish you were. All right, to meet those contractual requirements, and then maintain public trust through high professional and ethical standards in the entire process. So what does it look like? So this is the new framework I talked about under CMMC 1.0. We had 5 different tiers. Under the new model, we have 3 tiers, and those tiers have specific requirements, either for self-attestation or for higher levels of cyber hygiene for more sensitive information in projects and contracts, a demonstrated through a government assessment. So under CMMC model 1.0, you can see on the left that we had 5 different levels. Level 1 was basic, so federal contract information only. Intermediate, we had a different, a little bit higher level with some additional practices. Level 3 was referred to as a good cyber hygiene. Here we're looking at controlled unclassified information. 130 practices with 3 processes have to be demonstrated by a third party. So level 4, proactive. So this is a transition level where not only are you demonstrating a cyber hygiene, but you're doing some additional rigor to track and try and improve. Level 5 being advanced, again, controlled unclassified information, CUI, other critical programs that were assessed for certain types of information that required an additional amount of rigor at the highest level. If you look at the right-hand side now, we can see CMMC Model 2.0. We only have 3 levels. And so level 1 still has those foundational cyber hygiene, 17 practices for not necessarily critical information, but information that still, should not be disclosed to people who are not authorized to see that. And so that requires the initiation of 17 different practices and requires you to conduct an annual self-assessment or self-attestation based on the framework that will come out at the end of the program period. It allows the organization to demonstrate through a self-assessment that they're meeting those requirements. In a level 2, we're in a more advanced level of cyber hygiene and cyber protection. There's 110 practices that need to be demonstrated, which aligns with the NIST Special Pub 800-171. That's the second part of this briefing today. And so that it refers to the protection of controlled, unclassified information. All right, triennial third-party assessment. So every 3 years, you may have a third-party external assessment team come in for critical national security information, or if you don't meet the rigor at that level, you may, based on your contract language, perform self-assessment. Either way, you will be conducting an annual self-assessment for select programs and providing that information up as well. In level 3, this is more of the expert level. You're a sound, demonstrated information security, cyber hygiene practices based on the NIST Special Pub 800-171 as well as 172. You may have more than 110 different practices that need to be demonstrated. Again, this one will be specifically a triennial government-led assessment on premises where you process, transmit, and store sensitive information in support of a government contract. All right, so within the implementation of Cmmc 2.0, the department is introducing several key changes that build on and refine the original program requirements. So based on feedback coming back from those who are, have legacy contracts, trying to understand how to comply, the cost associated with what compliance would cost on the bottom line. Some organizations were just choosing to walk away because things weren't defined, or they were defined in such a way that who wants to spend millions of dollars to introduce technology when they're not guaranteed to get a contract. Now, what I would argue is that we should all be doing some type of basic cyber hygiene to protect our environment as part of our business strategy, so that those competitors out there and those state actors don't get access to the secret sauce, those things that we do differently that sets us apart from our competitors. So it should be a business strategy that you'd want to protect sensitive information in your own organization anyway. So the models, the streamlined model, the reliable assessments, and the flexible implementation. So again, these are several key changes based off of the original program requirements. So here we're focused on the most critical requirements, streamlines the model from 5 to 3 compliance level, as I showed you in the previous slide, aligned with widely accepted standards, using NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, cybersecurity standards as the baseline. So NIST Special Pub 171, Controlled Unclassified Information, and NIST 172. Reliable assessments. So, having demonstrated cyber, hygiene environment provides reduced assessment costs, allows all companies at level 1 foundational and a subset of companies which may be at level 2 advanced to demonstrate compliance through self-assessments. But there's going to be a requirement that you understand what you're self-assessing. You can't have an intern show up for the summer and come do a self-attestation assessment. They need to understand what they're attesting to. You need to understand what that level of rigor needs to be. And then you're going to sign off on that document and send it up. Higher accountability. So higher accountability for more critical or more sensitive information increases oversight of professional and ethical standards of third-party assessors. So if you hire a company, say through the SBDC, to come in and help you with your strategy, there's got to be a level of rigor of demonstrated experience by that person that you hire, that company that you hire, to get you to the cyber hygiene that you're looking for. All right, and then flexible implementation. So spirit of collaboration allows companies under certain limited circumstances to make what we call, on the commercial side, we would call it a risk register. So that's a business term. On the government side, we call this a plan of action and milestones, or a POAM, to achieve certification. The idea behind a POAM is to identify those areas that you may not be compliant, maybe because you have a lack of funding, you don't have access to the resources that you need, maybe you just need a little bit more time. The idea behind the POAM, or what we call the risk register, is to identify those areas where you have gaps and then track those until you're able to close those gaps. Adds flexibility, speed, allows waivers to the Cmmc requirements under certain limited circumstances. Those will be determined by each contract program officer or your contracting officer in execution of the contract. Rulemaking and timeline for Cmmc 2.0. So the changes reflected in Cmmc 2.0 will be implemented through rulemaking processes. So the idea here is, a lot of people are attending the seminar to find out, well, what do I have to comply with today, right now? And do I still have to comply with the DFARS clauses that were sent out 2 years ago? The answer for that, I've got some basic questions that have been sent in that we're gonna respond to and answer to as part of this presentation as well. Okay, so let's answer that, right? So we comply once, the forthcoming rules go into effect. The Department of Defense intends to pursue rulemaking both in Part 32 of CFR as well as the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation, DFARS, supplement, or 48. Both rules will have a public comment period where stakeholders such as small businesses and government entities supporting small businesses will provide input to critical to the meeting objectives of your Cmmc program. The department will actively seek opportunities to engage stakeholders as it drives towards full implementation. While these rulemaking efforts are ongoing, the department intends to suspend the current Cmmc piloting efforts and will not approve inclusion of Cmmc requirement in any current DoD solicitation. So this is one of the big questions on a lot of people's mind. Right now, we're in a hiatus period as they try and refigure everything out for Cmmc 2.0. So the department encourages contractors to continue to enhance their cybersecurity posture during the interim period while the rulemaking is underway. So while they're trying to figure it out, you should be doing something to move forward anyway. Don't wait until the last second and then you're going after a contract that all of a sudden requires new DFAR language for you to demonstrate a cyber hygiene. You should be moving forward anyway. So the department has developed Project Spectrum, which you can find on the OSD site, to help defense industrial-based companies assess their cyber readiness and then begin adopting sound cybersecurity practices. Again, start doing the self-attestation now. You don't have to necessarily attest, but do the self-assessment portion so you have a good baseline to understand where you're at. That criteria already exists. So the DoD is exploring opportunities to provide incentives for contractors who voluntarily obtain a CMMC certification in the interim period. Additional information will be provided as it becomes available. Well, so they're still trying to figure stuff out, so it's going to be difficult to obtain that CMMC certification until they publish the rule. All right, so what are some of the common questions that keep coming up that we want to answer? So now that CMMC 2.0 is published, will companies be required to comply with CMMC 1.0? So, the response is the interim DFARS rule established a 5-year phase-in period during which CMMC compliance is only required in a select pilot contract as approved by the OSD, or the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. So the department does not intend to approve inclusion of a CMMC requirement in any contract prior to the completion of the CMMC 2.0 rulemaking process. So the answer is no. Once CMMC 2.0 is codified through rulemaking, the department will require companies to adhere to the revised CMMC framework according to the requirements set forth in the regulation. So no, I don't have to comply with CMMC 1.0. So there's a hiatus, this interim period right now. And if you were part of one of the pilot contracts, you're working with the Department of Defense right now through that. So some of the pilots are still having to do it. But if you were not part of the pilot program, the answer is no. When will CMMC 2.0 be required for Department of Defense contracts? So the publication of the materials relating to CMMC 2.0 reflect the department's strategic intent with respect to the CMMC program. However, 2.0 will not be a contractual requirement until the department completes the rulemaking to implement the program. They have to update the legislation. They have to update the contract language. That nothing is going to be implemented in current contracts until they do the rulemaking. So that rulemaking process and the timelines can take between 9 and 24 months. So CMMC 2.0 will become a contract requirement once the Department of Defense and Congress and legislation have finished the rulemaking. Once that rulemaking is completed and been voted on and been enabled and initiated, then the compliance language for your contracts will be evident. Okay, so why did the department make these changes? Well, I'm not going to go into all of the politics, but CMMC 1.0 and some of the participants in the initial program, there might have been some shady things going on. Again, I'm not going to go into the details. The program was not being run and executed as initially intended. There was a lot of rigor that we're going to put small businesses out of business. There was lack of acceptance of, hey, I have this level of cyber hygiene and it doesn't meet the requirements, but you're not going to give me any time to get where I need to be. Either you are 100% vested with a specific cyber hygiene, or you weren't. And if you were demonstrated, then you could get a government contract. If you weren't demonstrated and maybe you had a few gaps, they would not allow you to do a POEM. They would not allow you to do a waiver. That was just, in my opinion, just ridiculous. I do certification accreditation at all classification levels for the federal government, up to very highly classified levels within the intelligence community. And we allow POEMs, and we allow us to track where the deficiencies are, establish strategies to get to a sound cyber hygiene. So why wouldn't we do it on this side? All of those things contributed to why the department had to make some changes. So the department values feedback from the industry, Congress, other stakeholders, received over 850 public comments in response to the interim rule establishing CMMC 1.0. So the comments focused on the need to enhance CMMC by reducing costs, particularly for small businesses. It was going to be significantly financial burden to try and do this for a lot of small businesses. Increasing trust in the CMMC assessment ecosystem. like I said, there was some potential shady things going on, preferential, influence, I will use that word, on what was happening as far as how to be an assessor, eliminating somebody like myself who's been doing this for 20 years, unless I went and got one of their certifications. I don't intend on being a Cmnc authorized C3PAO assessor. I plan on helping clients achieve the cyber hygiene. So when they get the assessment, I'm with them. And there was undue influence that says I have to go out and get a certification to be able to help my customer. And that was one of the things that we're not having to mandate that anymore. But clarifying, aligning cybersecurity requirements to other federal requirements and commonly accepted standards. So Cmnc 2.0 was designed to meet these goals, which also contributes towards enhancing the cybersecurity of the defense industrial base. How much is it going to cost to implement Cmnc 2.0? The answer to that is it depends. Who are you? What are you processing, transmitting, storing? Are you on-prem? Are you in the cloud? There's a lot of different factors. But the department will publish a comprehensive cost analysis associated with each level of Cmnc 2.0 as part of that rulemaking. Costs are projected to be significantly lower than what they were initially published for Cmnc 1.0 because the department intends to streamline requirements at all levels, eliminating Cmnc unique practices and maturity processes. This is why we went from 5 tiers to 3, and then allow companies associated with the new level, foundational, and some other level 2 advanced acquisition programs to perform self-assessments rather than third-party assessments. So if you're doing a third-party assessment, you've got to pay that organization. As a company that goes out and does different types of cyber hygiene assessments, we do 27001, we do NIST, we do PCI. There's different ones. It could be anywhere from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars. Well, if you're a small company and you're only required to do self-attestation, you're going to have to train up your own internal team to perform self-assessments. That's a lot less costly. And then increased oversight of the third-party assessment ecosystem so that the people that are coming in, their demonstrated qualifications will be based on, what their experience level is over the years. All right. So that talks about Cmnc and answers those questions. I like to show this slide to show you what the current Department of Defense industrial based cybersecurity efforts are that you should be aware of as they come forth. These were published at the end of last year. So cyber threat information intelligence sharing within the defense industrial base. Hey, they want you to share what's going on. If you see something that looks kind of shady or people are calling you or, things, don't look normal in your day-to-day operations, maybe you have some undue influence on the telephone, via email, people are showing up, visiting your program, work within the defense industrial base and share that information. Defense industrial base cybersecurity requirements assessment mechanisms. So this provides additional resources aligned with DFAR's requirements that help you identify that sensitive information and then define how to protect that from a high level. Incident reporting, you're going to be required to report if somebody breaches your information intentionally, unintentionally. You have to act with integrity and be forthcoming and disclose what's going on. That way, the organizations, the Department of Defense, the primes, they can help you with your cyber hygiene to prevent that from happening again. Cybersecurity technical assistance and collaboration. So here's where all the different stakeholders offers a vehicle for DoD collaboration within your defense industrial base, establishing, maintaining relationships, hosts evenings, sub-working groups, forums for collaboration, webinars such as what we're doing now. The idea is to help the ecosystem better understand and collaborate with the resources that are available. All right, so we talked about 171. So if you really have sensitive information and you're going to have a third-party assessment, This is going to be specifically on certain types of controlled unclassified information. It could be contract information. It could be sensitive technical information. The idea is it needs to be protected with a higher level of rigor. So NIST 171, so 800-171, defines the requirements for controlled unclassified information. So lawful government purpose is any activity, mission, function, operation, endeavor within the U.S. government which is authorizes, recognizes within the scope of its legal authorities or legal authorities of non-executive branch such as state and local law enforcement. When do we share CUI? If access promotes common project or operation between agencies, or a contract or agreement, say as a government contract, from a contractor to a Department of Defense, within a designating agency such as the Missile Defense Agency, the U.S. Air Force or Space Force or the Army, when not to share. If access to CUI harms or inhibits a common project or operation between agencies under a contract or agreement with the designating agency, then you're not supposed to share. And this applies not just to government contracts, but between government entities, contracts themselves, and establish, different agreements to protect classified or controlled unclassified information. All right, CUI registry. Okay, so the CUI registry is maintained by the National Archives. Okay, the United States National Archives. CUI registry is the repository of all information, guidance, policy, requirements on handling controlled unclassified information, or CUI. So the CUI registry is a catalog of what the executive branch should be protecting. So the executive branch is all the federal agencies, right? So the CUI registry identifies all approved CUI categories. You may have remembered categories like FOUO, for official use only, SBU, sensitive but unclassified information. These are all caveats that are now supposed to go away and be replaced with CUI. So approved CUI categories, subcategories, provides general descriptions for each, identifies the basis for controls for each, and then establishes markings, includes guidance on handling procedures. So provides identification of categories and subcategories, limited dissemination controls, marking guidance, CUI notices, training and awareness, and provides annual reports to the president on how the program is being managed. So you see here the URL out to the CUI information site where you can get additional information, access to resources on how to protect controlled unclassified information. So there's two types of CUI. There is Cui Basic and Cui Specified, or sometimes referred to as Cui Specific. So Cui Specific requires unique markings. The technical information is so unique that it's being identified and needs very unique protection. So we have laws, regulations, or government-wide policies which require specific protections, unique markings, enhanced physical safeguards, maybe a safe with a lock on it, limits on who can access the information, initiating the privilege of need to know and lease privilege. So just because I have a top secret clearance doesn't mean I get access to all the top secret information. Same thing with CUI. Just because I may be cleared to access CUI doesn't mean I get access to all CUI information. I only get access to what I need to be able to do my job and no more. And then I limit the access to only those who are required to access the information. So one of the things that the government is responsible to do, and this is one of the challenges that we have with the CUI program, the government holds the responsibility to tell the prime holds the responsibility based on that conversation to tell the subs what needs to be protected. It is not up to the subs, it is not up to the primes to determine what information needs to be protected under CUI. So they may put a clause in your contract saying you have to protect it, but the government has a requirement and obligation to tell you what that information is. And that is one of the cruxes, one of the disheartening parts of the CUI program. Push back you may have to comply with CUI and Cmmc, but the government has to tell you what is being processed, transmitted, or stored, what needs to be protected. Cui Basic. Here we have laws, regulations, or government-wide policies which do not require specific protections. The idea is to understand Cui Basic and that you have some level of cyber hygiene. Marking CUI, banner marking. So CUI banner marking may include up to 3 different elements. So here's an example on the right-hand side. All right, so CUI //SP dash specified / dissemination. So we know based on what we see here with this example, that is CUI specific or CUI specified. All right, so the CUI control marking, which is mandatory, may consist of the word controlled or the acronym CUI. So the CUI category or subcategory markings, which are mandatory for CUI specified because it's higher sensitive information, provide CUI control markings and category markings which are separated by using 2 /. If you have a clearance and you have access to classified information, you probably are aware of this is a similar naming convention that we use to identify a piece of classified information with specific handling caveats. So those / would identify specific handling caveats or access controls on top of the classification itself. It's very similar with CUI. Limited dissemination control markings for CUI control markings, category markings that are separated from limited dissemination controls, markings by a double /. All right, emails that contain CUI. All right, here's an example of how the original recipient carried forward the CUI markings from an original email. If you're going to forward an email that's already been CUI marked, you need to still notify everyone else who's getting it that you're forwarding to that it's CUI with whatever handling caveats. So that's always going to be the first thing at the top of the email header or inside of your email is going to be that CUI marking. Must include the banner marking above the email text, must include a banner marking above the email text when forwarding or responding CUI received by mail, may include subject line indicators of CUI in the email text. CUI may be shipped through mail. We ship up to classified secret through the mail. So interagency mail systems, post office, commercial delivery, automated tracking is the best practice for classified. We know that it's required. It's best practice if you're going to send CUI via mail to send it registered, receipt, and mark it appropriately. CUI must be stored or handled in controlled environments that prevent or detect unauthorized access. So sealed envelopes, areas where equipped with electronic locks, or again, a special room that you designate, doors, overhead bins, drawers, filing cabinets that are locking. So physical protection. Controlled environments for electronic. 80% of our business processes in most industries are automated. We're using technology to do the work. So limit and control access to CUI with the workforce by establishing electronic barriers. So dedicated network drives, SharePoint sites, intranet sites. Do an audit of where you might possibly store, transmit, or process this information. So think of HR, security, supervisory, contract language, research and development, and support of a government contract. These are all areas where you can do that inventory. When reproducing or faxing CUI, you must use agency-approved equipment. You can't just send it over public networks. Look for signs on approved equipment. So that is going to be something that you would get access to the resources to be able to establish this within your organization. Reporting CUI incidents, I showed you on that one slide. You have to report an unauthorized disclosure or a breach. So incidents involving CUI must be immediately reported. Agencies and organizations must have a means such as hotlines, email addresses, or points of contact for employees to report incidents. All right, what are you going to report? Incidents may include, but are not limited to, improper storage of CUI, suspected mishandling of CUI, when unauthorized individuals gain access to CUI, either physical or electronic, unauthorized release of CUI, either through public-facing websites or to unauthorized individuals, suspicious behavior from the workforce, insider threats, general disregard for security procedures, maybe seeking access to information outside the scope of current responsibilities, attempting to access, enter or access sensitive areas where CUI is stored, discussed, or processed. Follow your agency policy procedures regarding how to report incidents. For the Department of Defense, the government's required to provide those resources for you as well. So if I need to destroy it, all right, so look at the difference here in this image, not approved. I can still put things back together. I have time and patience. Whereas the micro shred on the right-hand side, the term is used, defensible destruction. You want to destroy to a degree that makes information unreadable, undecipherable, or irrecoverable. Destroy paper using cross-thread shredders, produce particles that are 1 millimeter by 5 millimeter. All right, so use a rigorous process so that things can't be reconstructed. Here's some signs for approved destruction equipment and methods. So there's some standards you can follow that are out there. Some organizations choose to hire a vendor for approved CUI destruction. Iron Mountain's one of the big ones. You put a lock on this container. People are authorized to dump this stuff in there. Somebody will come and unlock that, grab the information, and give a document of defensible destruction demonstrating that they did it. So never use trash cans or recycling bins to dispose of your CUI. So remove or strike all markings on decontrolled. So if somebody decides it's no longer CUI, we can downgrade that documentation. So reused, released, donated, follow your agency policy to remove or strike CUI only on the first page, on any cover pages, or the first page of any attachments. For more information on how to manage a CUI program, again, this is part of the Cmmc Level 2, Controlled Unclassified Information under NIST Special Pub 171. Here's the information where you can get more information on how to identify and manage your CUI program. From the Cui Registry, you'll find training videos, additional resources to increase your understanding of these concepts. All right, this is the last slide, so I'll pass it back to our program and see if we have any questions out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. I know there's so much information to pack into 45 minutes here and could go way deeper into so much of this. So I appreciate you.
Oh, yeah.
All of it. Yeah. All right, so we do have some questions submitted. We'll get to as many of these as we can. Let's see here. Just kind of general timeline. Do you know when the new 2.0 will be reflected on the SPRS? SPRS.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's under Sbir's or any federal agency or program. DoD rulemaking process needs to commence first. And so between 9 and 24 months is what they're projecting before they'll come out with the new rulemaking, which requires legislation that tells you when you have to comply. So yeah, I would say 9 to 24 months.
Yeah, big range it sounds like. But
yeah, well, it's the speed of government.
Yeah. All right, let's see, since we just talked about CUI, and there's a question here, what to do when redacted CUI is found on a public site?
So if it's redacted, yes, the requirements for you under managing your program require you to report. If you find redacted CUI, that's kind of a difficult question. What's been redacted? Is it the technical information that's been redacted? Redacted means that it's not being displayed. So I would take that a case by case, but yeah, I would definitely be reporting back for incident management with the resources that I provided earlier. Remember that you get a copy of these slides to include all the resources where if you need to report or if you need additional information, all that's been provided in this presentation today. But I would take that one on a case-by-case basis. Redaction means, we've declassified or we've removed sensitive information. The federal government does this under the Freedom of Information Act all the time. So case-by-case is what I would say.
Gotcha. And this person did expand on that, saying they only redacted the names of officials, but it was still marked as CUI.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, so if you have a clearance, you're obligated if you come across classified information in the open, and I've seen, NSA briefings on the internet that were somehow breached. I have an obligation to report that back to my facility security officer, give them the context of what happened. When you have a clearance, for example, you're obligated not to seek out classified information because you've raised your hand and sworn that oath, even after you no longer have a clearance, or but you've obligated that. So CUI, I don't know that they have that amount of rigor, but if you want to be a good citizen, report it.
Makes sense. All right, so this person is asking if a small company implements NIST 800-171 compliance, do they automatically get CMMC 2.0 compliance, or are other steps required in addition?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that comes right back to what level of CMMC are you supposed to be compliant with? If it's level 1, then you can do a self-assessment. And if you believe that you meet all the requirements, you do self-attestation and you report that up to your government contract. Some areas in level 2 will still allow you to do a self-assessment and self-attestation. But when you do that, you're going to have to do that self-assessment. That you're doing isn't just writing an email going, yeah, we're pretty good. They're going to give you a framework that you need to assess, and you're going to document everything, and you're going to send that report up. So if you only have to do self-assessments and self-attestation, then yes, you're going to demonstrate a specific cyber hygiene to protect, probably Cui Basic. But if you are required to have a third-party assessment through the government, you'll have to wait until the government provides those results and shows you where the gaps are before you can maintain or declare compliance.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. So this person has a question about SBIR phase 1s specifically. So saying, who decides what level CMMC a small business must achieve if selected for a phase 1 SBIR? Is it the contracting officer technical representative, technical program manager? And then is it the company being certified, or is each individual project being certified at a specific level?
So companies are certified. Let's talk about that first. So it doesn't matter if you're a prime contractor or a subcontractor to a prime. The idea is that your organization, for the duration of a specific contract that requires it, your company will demonstrate compliance with CMMC at the various levels. But again, going back, right now, if you are in a SBIR program, you're not required to comply with CMMC version 1 or version 2. Now, if you're asking about what you should be getting prepared for, you wait for the contract language comes down after they implement the rulemaking, 9 to 24 months, and then the government is required to tell you what needs to be protected. So if they put you in an SBIR in the future that has that requirement, after the rulemaking has been determined and they define that language, then you have to comply with what they tell you have to comply with. Right now, there's no compliance requirement.
Great, thank you. So this question is about cloud providers. So they're saying, if a program uses cloud providers, are FedRAMP and CMMC both required, or how do the controls relate or overlap?
Yeah, so that's another good question. So we don't just operate on-prem, right? On what I call on-premises or on-prem. We operate in the cloud. So what I would tell you, I use a brokered service. So I have lots of clients all over the United States doing different things in different industries. I've got architects, engineers, construction folks. I've got banks. And in some instances, we help them solve problems. And that is where, if you're in the cloud, or if you're using a brokered service, find a broker that can find you a cloud service that meets the CMMC requirements, meets PCI requirements, whatever the requirements are. So maybe it's a SOC 2 Type 1 or a SOC 2 Type 2 report from a CPA. The idea is to find a cloud service provider that has a certification in those things that you're looking for. On the cloud side, if you are in a government contract, one of the good things to know is we have what's called Gov Cloud. So Gov Cloud is already approved in some instances up to the TS-SCI, so top secret SEI. For a government contract, you can apply to have services provided through government cloud that meets all of your requirements for FedRAMP, for CMMC, what other additional rigors are required in your contract. So either look for a service provider who's already got those, ask them to demonstrate that with some type of certification from an assessment authority. But again, right now, no one's required to comply with it. They may have to be FedRAMP compliant. They can get FedRAMP compliant right now, but CMMC will be after the rulemaking period is done and they decide what they're going to do for contract language.
Got it. Thanks for that. All right, I think I have time for maybe a couple more.
Sure.
So the person is saying that it seems 2.0 overlaps with 1.0 for some time. So what are the responsibilities of a small business now that supplies components to a prime?
There are no requirements right now. Remember, we're in the interim period. So the requirements that they will publish for 3 different tiers will require a small business to implement cybersecurity hygiene, which you should be doing now to protect everything that you're doing. So it should be a business strategy. I mean, we put locks on our car doors and our house doors with keys to keep people out that don't belong. We should be doing the same thing for our small business as well, right? So you want to protect those things. So you should be doing some type of cyber hygiene as a business strategy now. There's no compliance requirements now until they do the rulemaking, but the amount of rigor that goes into that is defined as what is it that you're trying to protect, what is being processed, transmitted, or stored. Is it Cui Basic? Is it Cui specified? If it's Cui specified, I guarantee you're going to have to put a lot more rigor, a lot more attention, because you're going to have to be required to conduct a third-party assessment. So be prepared for that. And that's how you negotiate with the prime and how you determine what your costs are going to be when you respond to an RFP as well.
Fantastic. So let's do one more. I know you started talking about this already, but maybe just kind of sum it up kind of quickly. How does CMMC 2.0 help reduce costs for small businesses?
So it now allows POAMs, so that risk register thing I talked about. So if you do have gaps in some instances, they're going to allow you some time to get to a healthy state. So that's one of the big ones. The other is at level 1 and some areas of level 2, the reduced cost now is you're not having a third-party assessment coming in charging you tens of thousands of dollars to do an assessment in your organization. So if you fall under the self-assessment, self-attestation, it's up to you to spend the time to assess your own organization, which significantly reduces costs to a small business. But again, you've got to work with the government, work with the prime, or if you are the prime on a government contract, the government has to tell you what needs to be protected. If you're processing CUI Basic or CUI Specified, that allows you to better understand what you've got. And so the rules on CUI already exist. The rules on how to protect CUI already exist. I have several clients that they're probably 90% compliant with NIST 171. This program already exists, and CMMC is based off of 171. You're waiting for the Department of Defense to get their act together for a program that's already here. CUI is already here. They've already defined what those requirements are. The government that you have a contract for needs to tell you what's being protected, either specified or basic. We know that specified has more rigor and is going to include a third-party assessment. So the big cost is that assessment to be able to comply. And if you have to do it internally, you're saving a lot of time and money.
Great, that's really helpful. So I know we're up on time here. There's more questions coming in, but we will be sending out all of this. You'll get a copy of the recording as well as the slides that Sean shared with us today. And like we said, Sean is one of our lead consultants for the cyber program statewide. So happy to make that connection. We'll send you information out in that follow-up email. But Sean, do you have any final words you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that, remember, 80% of what we're doing, we're using technology, tablets, we're using the cloud, we're using all kinds of different things. Do an inventory of your own sensitive information, your own data, whether it's CUI or not. You're creating really cool things and technologies, and you're trying to get people to buy them, to include the government. How are you protecting your own intellectual property and your sensitive data? Start looking at it proactively now. Don't wait until the government tells you, what needs to be done. As a small business owner myself, it's one of those things that sometimes we get lost in the weeds operating our business instead of, growing it and understanding it and protecting it. So I would just say, take an inventory, look at what you've got, see what needs to be protected, and start doing it now while they're trying to figure it out.
Awesome advice. So thank you again, Sean, and thanks to everyone who joined us today. Hope you all have a great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.